Hi, okay, welcome to session 9. So here is our recap. Plenty to get stuck in with there. So I want you to hit pause and press play when you're ready. Okay, here are our answers. Whoops, jumping around a bit. There you go. Okay, so mark, and then I'm just going to go through the two that I've highlighted. Okay, so really just, I mentioned this a couple of sessions ago, and I really just wanted to mention it again. You can divide by the bottom and times by the top. Dividing 8 by 5 doesn't go perfectly. It would require you to go into bus shelter. It does work fairly quickly and easily, but it does require you to go into the bus shelter. So again, it's just about those options and the choice that you might have. So you could stick it over the 1, and then you could say that you've got 24 over 5. That would give you 5 4/5 if you were to go and obviously finish it off. If you were to do it in bus shelter, you would get your decimal answer out, which would be 4.8. And either is fine because they're equivalent at the end of the day. 4.8 is 5 4/5. So they're just alternative ways to write it. So how you chose to do that one is really up to you, because you want to use the methods that come naturally to you, don't you? Okay, so shop A and shop B is a slightly different question. And if you rely solely on working out the cost of one toilet roll, then you would have chosen shop A, because shop A's toilet roll came out at 40p, whereas shop B's came out at 45p. But there's a little bit more going on here. You've been told to work out which shop he should buy them from based on the fact that he needs 30 toilet rolls, okay? So you've got to think about the context. So when you get into these wordy problems, yes, the maths is really, really important, but you've got to interpret your maths. You've got to interpret your results that you get. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So if I'm thinking about shop A and I'm thinking about getting 30 toilet rolls from them, one of the ways that I could do it is I could go, okay, 12 rolls are going to cost me £4.80. If I buy another pack, that's going to give me 24 rolls and will cost a total of £9.60. I'm going to need another pack. Otherwise, I haven't got the 30 that I need. And that comes out at £14.40. Okay. Alternatively, I could think about my times tables and multiply up to the first one that takes me over 30, which I'll show you in shop B. So shop B are coming in packs of 4. I'm going to need 8 packs to get me over 30. So I could do 4 packs are costing me £1.80. I'm going to times by 8. That is supposed to be a time sign. It's supposed to be a time sign on an angle, and it just comes out looking like a plus. But anyway, it is a times. It is 32. And obviously, when I multiply that side, I get the answer, which is 14.40. There is actually no monetary difference whatsoever by going to shop A and shop B. They are both going to cost £14.40. So when I am explaining which shop he should buy them from, it isn't actually going to be about the money that I talk or comment on. It's going to be about the number of toilet rolls in this case, because it still makes better sense to go to shop A, even though the money's the same, because shop A is giving me more toilet rolls. So I'd be crazy not to go to shop A. We're going to be doing fractions, percentages, and decimals. This isn't technically grade 3, it is a lower one, but pupils do struggle with this. Okay, so actually, as your maths gets a little bit more confident, that's probably a better time to start looking at this, because when you're told, oh, this is a real basic grade 1, maybe 2, and you can't do it, it kind of sends a message, oh, well, if I can't even do that, which is grade 1, then I won't be able to do maths, which is wrong. And it's not the message that we want to get across. It's just a tricky little sucker, basically. And I much prefer to introduce it when we as learners are feeling a little bit more confident about how we're getting on in our maths. And we should be doing pretty well. I certainly hope we are. So it's actually fairly straightforward if you remember how you learnt your numbers in the first place and use that. It's absolutely brilliant, but we hardly ever see it in secondary education. And that is our hundreds, tens, units, tenths, hundreds. And obviously it continues off in that direction, it continues up in that direction, but we're just going to narrow our questions here. If I've got to change a percentage to a decimal, or a decimal to a fraction, or a fraction to whatever, if I'm doing those types of equivalent questions, I want my brain to trigger use your place value grid. And I'm going to show you how much easier it makes this feel. I can't say it's, going to just be the easiest thing in the world. I promise you it's going to be easier than what you've been doing if you haven't used this. The other thing to add to this, however, is the percent symbol, because it does have a place. Remember, percent means out of 100. This here is out of 100. So I could also place my percent symbol over the out of 100. So that's a top tip, right? Top tip. All right, so let's have a look at what we're going to do and how we're going to use it. If I said to you, we've got 7%, and I want you to change that to a decimal, okay? Most common answer I see is 70%, okay? I do see, oh, sorry, we're changing it to a decimal. What am I talking about? I do see 0.7. Okay, that's the most common. So this is how we're going to do it. 7% means 7 out of 100. So the 7 has to live there, 7 out of 100. I then fill in all the way to the decimal point, any gaps. I can't have a decimal point floating around. So I fill in my units as well. And there's the answer. 7% to a decimal is 0.07. So, and they love doing things that are easy for students to go wrong on. So we want to make sure we've got something up our sleeve to stop that. So that is how you would change a percentage. You would now also be able to easily write the fraction, because percent means out of 100. So if I was being asked to do that one into a fraction, it would literally be 7 over 100. Okay, let's look at another percentage. Let's look at 28%. 28%, the last digit goes into the percent column, and then you work your way backwards, and there's your answer. So as a decimal, it's 0.28. As a fraction, okay, and this is important, it's all the digits, oops, don't do that, up to the fraction. So it's 28 out of the 100. Okay, right, that was a good start. Let's clean that up, clean this up, and do a different starting point. Let's say that this time we're going to do a decimal. So we've got 0.05 that we have to change into, let's say, a fraction this time. So we'll do that first. So I'm just going to put the decimal in. That's easy to do because it's the actual place value is designed to be a decimal, isn't it? And I can see straight away that I've got the 5 under the 100. So it would be 5 over 100. Now that cancels, you could cancel it, but if it's a 1-mark question at the very, very beginning of the paper, they don't expect you to. You don't need to, you've got the answer, that is the fraction, okay? It simplifies, but they didn't ask you to do it, so don't. If it does ask you to simplify it, then do, but we're not going to do that. That's not necessary because, as I say, what we're learning to do is how to answer these types of questions that are at the beginning of the paper. They're 1 mark only, and they don't require any extra work, all right? 0.05 as a percentage then. Obviously, I've got 5 under the percent symbol, so it's 5%. All right, let's do another one. Let's do 0.2. So you just literally chuck that in. All right, if I'm changing that to the fraction, the 2 is directly under the 10. So I've got 2/10. Yes, it would cancel, but if it's a 1 marker, I'm not doing it. If it is, then I'm just going to half it. I'll get a 1/5, but generally speaking, we shouldn't need to do it. Okay, now as a percentage, I've got to be careful here. This 2 is not under the percent column. I can't start putting numbers in here or I'm going to change the value of it, but I can put a placeholder in. I can put a 0. And then what I've got is 2 digits, and then we're under that 100, we're under that percent symbol. So this would be 20 over 100, 20%. 20 over 100, if you wrote that as your fraction, you would get the answer right. 2/10 is right, a 1/5 is right. They're all equivalent fractions. So that's if you start with a decimal. What if you started with fraction? Okay, so let's say we had 3/10. I'm going to go to the tenths column and I'm going to put the number 3. And then obviously I need to make this look like it belongs. So in goes the point, and straight away I can see the decimal. Really easy and done. If I want the percentage, I need to be obviously under the percent column. I'm going to need to add a 0, and I can see that that is 30%. Okay. Now that only works as easy as that if the fraction I'm given matches the numbers in my place value, which quite often they do not. So let's look at one that is a bit trickier. Let's say I've got 2/5. Okay. 5ths do not exist in this place value grid. There is nowhere I can place the 2. So what I've actually got to do, whether I like it or not, is I have got to write an equivalent fraction. I need to get this fraction so it's either got a 10 or 100, doesn't really matter. Makes sense to go with the smaller numbers whenever possible. If I can get that 5 to be a 10, then I can put the information in. So if I times everything, top and bottom, by 2, I will write an equivalent fraction. And that tells me I've got 4/10. So 4 goes in the tenths column. And there's my answer, 0.4. My percentage, just need to fill in that 0, is 40%. Okay. Fractions are probably the hardest ones when you have to start with the fraction, but let's do another one. Let's do 1/25. I can't get that to be 10. So I might as well not even try. I can't divide it down. If I tried to do anything, I'd make the 1 a decimal. I can't have decimals. It's all got to be whole numbers. So I can't go to 10. I'm going to have to go to 100. So I've got to think about how many 25s are in that 100. There are 4, and I times that top and bottom, which will give me 4 hundredths. So this time the 4 has to be written in the hundredths column. And then I fill in my placeholders to make a real number. And then there's your decimal, 0.04. And what's the percent? It's just the number 4 under the percent sign. So 4%. Now, there are denominators that wouldn't multiply to the 10 or the 100. So this isn't like this all singing, all dancing method, but for all 1 mark questions at the beginning of a paper, do. They'll either work to the 10 or they will work to the 100, which means that's all you are going to need to be able to change between these 3 different number types. And these do come up every single year. They come up, and they come up more than once because they can come up on the calculator paper as well. Although, use your calculator if it does. The number of times I see the question go wrong on a calculator paper and I'm like, how? Use your calculator. It's because we're so conditioned in our lessons to do it all by hand that we forget we've got our calculator. Okay, I'm going to just fire some random questions at you now. Okay, I'm not going to possibly pause long enough for you to necessarily get them done. So I think you really are going to have to keep hitting pause and play, pause and play. Okay, so let's go with 80%. Okay, and then what I want you to do is I want you to write the decimal and the fraction. Okay, so hit play when you're ready. Okay, so 80% means I need 80 here. If I complete this with the placeholders, I get my decimal really, really easily. I don't need the 0 on the end, so I'll just call it 0.8. And then obviously percent means out of 100. I really don't even need the grid for that. I can just go straight into my 80 over 100. Simplify it only if you've been asked to. Okay, so that's your first one. Okay, let's do another decimal, 0.42. Hit play when you're ready. Okay, so 0.42 is going in. I can see it's 42 under the percent sign, and it's 42 out of 100. And again, simplify if you're asked to. Okay, let's do another one. Let's do 0.6 this time. Play when you're ready. Okay, let's insert the decimal. 6 is under the tenths, so it's 6/10. And to get to the percentage column, I'm going to need to stick a 0 in, making 60%. Okay, start with a percentage this time, 12%. Press play when you're ready. Okay, so 12%. I don't really need the place value holder. If I remember, percent just means out of 100. I can go straight to the fraction really, really easily, which means I've got 12 hundredths. And then I can see that decimal really, really easily. So on some questions, you'll be able to see it, so you probably won't use the value grid. And in other questions, you'll be grateful for it because it will make a massive difference. And it can stop you going wrong. You know, like that example I gave you where 7% is written as 0.7 and it's not at 0.07. Using it for things like that can make a huge difference. All right, here's one that's slightly different. I want to see what you do with it. So don't just let me tell you. Have a go, just see what you get. What if I gave you, oh, didn't mean to do that. I'll stretch that back out again. What if I gave you 1.28 as a decimal and told you I wanted that as a percentage and a fraction? That would be sod's law if something came up like that and you'd never seen it before. So hit play when you're ready. Okay, so 1.28. The fraction is I've got one whole. So I've got one whole with 28 over 100. So it's really just going into mixed numbers when you've got whole numbers included in the decimal. The percentage is all the digits that you can see. So if the 1 wasn't there, you'd be happily saying that's 28%, but the 1 is there. So it's going to be 128%. 1 is signifying I've got 100%. 28 is getting added on, so to speak. All right. If you got that right, really, really well done. So nice stuff. And let's just do one more before we do the last thing for this particular session. Let's do 8%. Okay, 8%, decimal and fraction. Hit play when you're ready. Okay, I got to have 8 in the percent column. If I put it here and then add a place value, I've just written the number 80. That isn't going to work. 8 in the percent column. Okay, fill everything else in with placeholders And then you've got your decimal clear as 0.08. And you've got your fraction, just 8 over 100, which again, we can pretty do without the grid because we know percent means out of 100 anyway. Okay, so that is those 1 markers, okay? Hopefully seeing that place value grid being used like that has made you think, actually, that's pretty good, I can do that. So this is another question that we just do really, really badly on, okay? It is when they mix up all these different types. So let's say I've got 2/5, 0.3, 35%, a quarter, and 0.305. And they say, put these numbers in order, starting with the smallest, whatever it might be. That's what we'll do. So we'll go in ascending order, which means starting with the smallest. It's usually 2 marks. And this is the important thing. It is usually on the calculator paper. No one uses the calculator. So we are going to do this using the calculator rather than everything in between. But here's where the marks happen. The marks happen when you start trying to change so that they're all in one format. Now, the easiest format to have these in are decimals. So when I look at this one and put that into my calculator will automatically give me 2/5 on the display because it's programmed to give me fractions. But once I press that S to D, I can see what the decimal equivalent is, and it's 0.4. 35%. 35% means 35 out of 100. I can stick that fraction in, and that's what it will show me. It will probably cancel it to one that's simpler, but it's still going to give me a fraction. Press that S to D, and I can see that that is coming out at 0.35. Going to change my quarter. In fact, I know that one is 0.25, but if you don't, you use your calculator. Now I've got everything in decimals. It's much easier for me to put them in order. Okay. The other thing that you've already done is got yourself some marks because you've done some converting. You don't even have to do all of them. As long as you've done a couple, you have got enough for that first mark. The next part of this requires you to put them in order. And some people do struggle a little bit when it comes to ordering their decimals. So I am going to show you a really nice trick because there are those questions, aren't there, where they're all decimals and then they've all got similar digits and it's like, that is confusing. So you can use this method here and it works an absolute treat. So what we're going to do is we're going to put them, I'm not going to try and rearrange them. I've got 0.4, 0.3, 0.35, 0.25, and 0.305. Now, when I look at these decimals, this one here has 3 decimal places. It's got the most number of decimal places. But if I get them to all have the same, then I can actually cheat a little bit with the way that I read the numbers. So they're all 3. They are now 3. I've put all the placeholders in so that they all have 3 decimal places now. And now I can literally see this as 400, 300, 350, 250, and 305. I can see that this 0.25 is the smallest. So this here is the smallest. So a quarter is going to get written down first. So really important to write down the numbers that were given in the question, not our working out numbers, okay? So I've got a quarter. I could maybe cross that off so I don't so it just doesn't get in my way, whatever helps, basically. The next one is 300, which is the 0.3, which is this one here. So 0.3. And then it's 305 down here, isn't it? So it's 0.305. Then it's 350, so it's the 35%. And finally, it is my 0.4, which is over here. And that is 2/5. So there is quite a lot of work to do there, especially if the decimals need to go into, if you need to see them. When you add your zeros, try and use a different color, because again, it makes it easier when you go back over here to match them. And do remember to write them in the same order. But your calculator does the work. You're just kind of organizing those numbers. And you only need this step if you've got a bit befuddled by the different decimals that you're looking at. For some pupils, they won't want that step or need that step. Okay, so it is over to you now with some practice. We've got those to do, and then I have the answers for you, and I will see you next session. That is it. Nice short one for us today. We work hard, don't we? All right, guys, I will see you next session.